Welcome to the No Hair, All Heart podcast. I'm your host, Mookie Spitz, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have two wonderful guests with me today. I have Dr. Barbara Minton. We did a podcast together back in August, Music as Medicine. And Barbara is a practicing psychologist, and you're also a wonderful musician in your own right. And you have collaborated on creating music for people to listen to and heal. And you do evidence-based science to monitor their brain in terms of the impact that the music has had on their well-being. And we talked a lot about that in the other podcast. And you collaborate with the wonderful guitarist, musician, Peppino D'Agostino. Now, the weird thing is, I had the Wah family of Mission Viejo, California, invite me almost at random to a Lord of the Strings event at the Mission Viejo Village Meeting Hall. And I didn't even put two and two together. You were headlining, Peppino, and you were on stage and you were giving kudos to your work with Barbara. You mentioned, here's a piece. I had a lovely time collaborating with Dr. Barbara Minton. And then my bald head went boom. It's Peppino from Calm the Storm. We had talked about you. We had lavished you with excitement and praise for that collaboration. So I reached out to Barbara. Get Peppino back on the podcast. Let's follow up on the great work that you've been doing. Let's hear some of your stories. And let's have a lively and wonderful conversation about all the great work that both of you are doing. And here we are. So thank you for joining. Barbara, do you want to share some of the excitement around even the new work you're doing around PTSD, new patient focus, and then some of the great collaboration that continues with Mr. Peppino?
Yeah, so it's been a time of excitement and growth and kind of wondering what's next. But just to back up a little bit, I work extensively with the brain, as you mentioned, and I became very intrigued with this idea of, can we create curated music to change the brain in a very positive way? And at that time, I was taking guitar lessons, and Peppino was my instructor. And, that's kind of like, he always blushes when I say this. It's sort of like learning from God, But how
did you guys connect? How did you find Peppino? He's got a name for himself already. To your point.
Yeah, I found him online. I was looking for an instructor that taught fingerstyle guitar, and I was looking around, and here's this amazing guy who's giving online guitar lessons. I'm sitting in Idaho, and I just emailed him. I said, look, I'm a complete beginner. I don't know what I'm doing. And I was very self-conscious, and he wrote me back. It was very kind. You were so kind to me. You were like, yes, I'll take you on. And that's how it started. So we got down the road a little bit, and I had started thinking about this project and asked him if he would work with me on composing these songs. And we had never met in person, so it was a little bit experimental. You can say from your side, Peppino, what you experienced, but we got together and started working on these songs, and that was the beginning of our collaboration.
Exciting. And from your point of view, Peppino, you have this lovely lady. She comes at you with some finger picking requests. And she also comes with this intent to heal people with music. And you've been healing people and entertaining people and enlightening people with your storytelling and performance for decades. Tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about your background.
Well, I started playing guitar when I was a little kid. I think I was 10 when I started. And, I was always kind of obsessed with this instrument, meaning that I really wanted to learn as much as possible. And so I'm self-taught, and life works in strange ways. Because at one point I was on a stage. I don't know how that happened. I was 16 or 17, and I was playing in a theater. I don't remember how that happened, but I was, and in that moment I realized that was going to be my life, and I've been doing this since then, touring the world and performing for audiences. And I always thought that music is a healing force, not only for the audience but for myself. To be honest, music is a reference. It's a kind of a stability for me. It's like my joy and my passion, and there's always something new to learn and discover. And in 1984 I came to this country, and I started playing in the streets of San Francisco, a Fisherman's Wharf, and then restaurants in North Beach. And then somebody, approached me, and they said, you should play, for audiences that really listen, because I was playing in bars and, noisy places, in the streets. And he introduced me to an agent, and that was the beginning of my career. In 1985, I did my first record, and I've been touring the world since then. And another passion of mine, of course, is teaching. That's how I met Barbara. And I also organize music retreats worldwide with some of the best musicians in the world. So I feel very lucky that I can make a living doing this. But this project was different. I mean, I always knew that music makes people feel better, but I didn't know that this can be actually quantized. And Barbara explained that to me through her research and what she does. And to me, it was very intriguing, the fact that actually you can see the effect of music on a screen. To me, it was like really kind of, okay, this can be actually quantized. And so when she asked me to collaborate, of course I said yes. And even though it was a little strange, because she gave me parameters to follow. So like BPM, beats per minute, and also frequencies. In other words, I could not play notes that were too high or too low. And also the meter should, was going to be kind of slow in general. So, but she also said, Peppino, you have to write melodies so that the brain can be engaged. And so we did that in a room. And, typically I write my music just on my own in my space. I never write with other people, but she was there, and she was wonderful. She was very quiet, just giving me occasionally some suggestion. And then we actually wrote a piece together. She said, Peppino, can you write a hymn, like a church hymn, on the spot? And I said, no. She said, no, you can. You can. She was pushing me. And I said, maybe I can. And so it was a very good collaboration. I have to say that I never done that before. And we were both respectful of our spaces, and I'm very happy with the recording that was done in that room. Actually, she recorded the guitar, and so she's also a sound engineer. This woman, this lady is very talented. So it's been quite an adventure. And when we perform the album live, it's interesting because when I play performances in theaters or festivals, and you've seen one of those, people at the end of each song, they applaud. No, they confirm that they liked it, that they like what I play. But when we play this album, usually we play the album from the beginning till the end, and we ask people not to applaud. And that's another thing that I was not aware of, that you could play an entire album, and then at the end, people actually they're quiet for minutes, because it's quite an experience to listen to this album. So it's all new territory for me, but I'm glad to be involved in this project.
Sounds like you were placed out of your comfort zone in a number of different ways. So there was the collaborative aspect. You're a solo performer, songwriter, and tonically, if you will, and in terms of the song selection and playing itself. When I saw you in Mission Viejo, what impressed me the most was your range. You go high, you go low. You love the flourished harmonics. You're very, very expressive. You're also chromatic in a lot of ways, where your heart comes directly through your finger picking, and it created a tapestry in my bald head, which was complex and wasn't particularly relaxing or calming, but it was evocative in a way that I found thrilling. And working with Barbara, to your point, you want people, at least for Calm the Storm, to relax, for their biometrics to come down, right, Barbara? To find ease and solace in the music. And that's a bold move for a musician to collaborate in ways you never did before, and to temper yourself in ways that would accommodate a particular need. Is that a way to characterize it? Is that accurate?
To me, I think it moved both of us out of our comfort zone. And really, sometimes it's that edge of discomfort where magic really happens, because you're sitting in a room with someone else who's pushing you in one direction and you're pushing in another direction. Collaboration is really interesting to me because it's a matter of both expressing who you are, but also allowing the other person to express who they are and coming to some common solution. And there's always some discomfort in that, whether it's in music or in science or in talk therapy or anything else. And when you can tolerate that discomfort, then the magic happens. That's what it feels like to me. But I wanted to say just something briefly, because we were talking about performing it, and I am actually playing pipe organ behind Peppino on Calm the Storm, because the deep resonant sounds of the pipe organ are very complementary to making the brain, to the intimacy of the guitar, which is very warm and kind of, sort of like listening to a bit of a lullaby, and then the grounding aspect of the pipe organ underneath it is very beautiful. And so when we talk about playing the concert, that's what we're talking about.
When I listen to music, I tap my foot, I move my head. There's a physicality to experiencing music, and you take that to a whole new dimensional level, where even in the backdrop, our brains are doing things, and we change almost biochemically, depending on what we're listening to and how. You mentioned, Peppino, that this was illuminating to you. I'm tacitly assuming as such a creative dynamo that you feel it here, right? When you write and when you perform. What have you learned out of this collaboration that adds another layer to your playing, to your songwriting, to how you might work with people and perform?
Well, the main thing that I learned is just related to the instruments themselves, how they match, because the pipe organ reaches frequencies that are extremely low, and the guitar is kind of mid-range, and I had no idea that this could work. In fact, it's not common to see, the guitar and the pipe organ being played in concert. It's very rare. So to me, that's the most interesting thing as a musician. Clearly, the music that we wrote together was also, was also very melodic, because, as I said before, Barbara said the brain needs to be engaged. Maybe she can tell you more about this. But for me as a musician, it's just the sound of the two instruments, how the sound works. And it works. The work that Barbara has done, besides, the science of creating, those parameters for the album, is also, she's a very accomplished musician. I mean, she can play Bach on the organ. So very complex music. Now in this album, she creates like the background where the guitar shines and the guitar expresses the melodies, and the pipe organ is in the back, but it's very essential to have that, that bath of sound. It makes the difference. It's really complementary, incredibly complementary, and it really makes the music. That's what makes the music, not just, the guitar and the pipe organ together. And that was the thing that really is the most important thing for me as a musician. The effect of the music is also there, because I see people sometimes, crying. One time maybe somebody fell asleep. But it's very emotional. It's a very emotional experience, these two instruments together.
Barbara, tell us about the song selection, and then we could dive into any song that you two would love to talk about in a little bit more detail, so we ground our listeners and viewers with the experience that you holistically created together.
Well, luckily for us, Peppino had some existing ideas and melodies to bring in, and then we arranged those, to fit the parameters of what we needed in order to calm the brain down. So which ones really struck you, Peppino, as being interesting or moving or fun for you?
Well, maybe Soul to Soul, because all the selections are very melodic, but there's something about this piece, I don't know, that, I think is very moving.
Mm-hmm. And comforting, in a comforting way. What do you think creates that in the musical arrangement?
Well, actually there's a little bit of question and answer between the guitar and the pipe organ, so that you can hear more than in other songs. You can hear these two instruments are talking to each other, and of course, the melody is haunting and calming, so I think maybe that's one of the pieces that, it has an effect on me more than the others.
Yeah.
How did it work?
Yeah, so we could, maybe play a little bit of the recording of that, but to me that piece is kind of like a big hug. That's how I experience it, especially in some of the chord progressions that just go down. Even that very beginning chord, that always kills me when I get to play that D, low D on the pipe organ pedal. It just is like being enfolded into a lovely, warm hug. And this is the thing people respond to with certain melodies and certain progressions. And then the way you've constructed it is just stunning. And there's a little bit of part in a minor key so that it kind of acknowledges some of the, to me, sort of the poignant parts of life or maybe difficult parts of life, but then it modulates back and everything resolves in the end. It's really beautifully constructed. I mean, you're just amazing at this sort of thing. It's such a thrill to play that with you.
So Peppino brought the melody to you, and did you guys improvise? Did you have time with the recording? I'm assuming you didn't use scores. You guys just riffed together. And how much was it working independently and then coming together to record live, and how much was it a collaborative improvisational process in real time together writing this song?
Well, this project started in this room, and we were writing the music, and at first just with the guitar, and then eventually we added the pipe organ. So the structure of the songs was already there, meaning the melodies, the chord progression below, and then we had to refine and really decide the harmony behind and what to play, because the organ, it's really a complex instrument. There's like 2 or 3 keyboards and then the pedals. So it's complex. Plus you have the stops. You decide what is the tone that you want. So poor Barbara, it was tough for her to create the right sound. And she's so detail oriented, and she really worked hard on finding, how to support this guitar. She did a wonderful job.
Well, we talked back and forth because you told me the chords, and then I made things up, and then I played them, and we were like, yeah, no, that's not the right one. Or you were like, no, that's supposed to be an F sharp minor. And so we did go back and forth on that. But I would say that was a pretty structured, we were not riffing, we were not improvising. We were really holding strongly to the melodies, the chord progressions, and the parameters of the brain that I had, that I thought might work. Now, the PTSD album that we're collecting data on right now is a little bit different, because I think that was more, we made everything up from scratch, and there's much broader instrumentation, much broader. I mean, we have from rock songs to beautiful lyrical songs on there. It's a much broader album, and that process felt pretty different to me. But I don't know about you, Peppino.
No, it was. Plus, you wrote a lot more than on Calm the Storm. So there was a lot more of your ideas in there, musically speaking, which I think was very important to it. Makes a distinction between the 2 albums. But we also work with a wonderful arranger that really was following our vision really well. So to really, the distinction between the 2 albums is that the second one, the one that will come out at one point this year or next year, it's more orchestral. And I will say that some of this music can be actually used in as movie soundtracks. Is some of the songs, like there's a piece that has a temporary title called Epic. So just the word epic, you think about movies like like Antarctica or what is the other movie? The score by Vangelis.
Blade Runner.
Blade Runner, or the other one. Chariot of Fire.
Right.
So, it's completely different. It's a different approach. In fact, I was asking Barbara, but because she is the one that, is obviously is the one that knows how this music can be effective with people with PTSD. But in this album, as she said before, you hear like prog rock pieces, epic songs like Hollywood, Ben-Hur, or and also there's blues. There's
That's right.
And she explained to me, and she can explain to you better, that for PTSD, certain things work for certain people. A certain kind of music works for other people. But she can explain that much better than me. So, but this is definitely a completely different album, and I love it. I really do love it.
Yeah. That, PTSD is a very complex disorder. Do you want me to talk about that just a little bit, Mookie?
And just to level set for our audiences,
Yeah.
Calm the Storm came out ostensibly for people with insomnia and sleep issues. So there's that kind of calming homogeneity to it. To Peppino's point, you gave him constraints. You were within a certain tonal range. Peppino couldn't go wild. He had to kind of create an ambiance and an experience so people can get to sleep. You put on Calm the Storm, and then you relax and your jittery brain calms down. Now for PTSD, and this is the segue to that, you've got a very different type of target audience dealing with a very different type of challenge.
Right. So Calm the Storm was really designed for insomnia, migraine, and chronic pain. And the reason those three fit together is because they share what we call nodes in the brain. So they're all kind of networked together in the brain. And you can see this, right? If you have chronic pain, you have trouble sleeping. These are related conditions. PTSD is a really, really complex disorder. And any of us who have had trauma or something terrible happen in our lives will appreciate this. So there's sort of that initial reaction, which we call dissociation, where you're just sort of floating around and you're kind of disconnected from reality and you're doing what you need to do, but you're not really feeling anything. That's a very important thing because we have to function when something traumatic happens. We can't just sit there and cry. Now, later on, we feel like we want to cry and we might have nightmares and we might start ruminating about things. So, and there's all sorts of different parts of PTSD. So
there's a journey. It's a
journey
of
and
feeling. Right.
It's an uncoordinated journey where you might go back and forth between these different states. And there's other than these two, but let's just stick with these two. So when you're dissociated, your brain needs a certain type of input. And when you're like sad and having ruminating thoughts about things, your brain wants another type of input. And I actually had a teenage client who had all kinds of trauma. I learned so much from my clients. It's just amazing. But this person went to heavy metal concerts like several times a week. And I was like, man, like this person has so much trauma. Why are they exposing themselves to all this high intensity music? And of course, it's because when you're ruminating and you have horrible thoughts and you can't get these ideas out of your mind, when you go to a concert with intense music, it drives everything else out of your mind. All that exists is the music. So
that's an ADHD kind of therapy as well. You and I had talked about that, my obsession with Scandinavian black metal and then the super intensity, which is it's just triggering the dopamine.
And I listened to every song you sent me too. They were so cool. Yeah.
Right, yeah, a lot of fun. And then the dynamic range between a female vocalist, almost soprano level with the heavy guitars and drums creates that kind of disassociation, which is a dopamine booster shot. So that gives Peppino an opportunity in this record too for a much broader range of expression, which you clearly enjoyed, Peppino, right? You got to roll your sleeves up a little bit and do different styles.
Yeah. Creating like a progressive rock piece or like a movie soundtrack or, technically, definitely different than Calm the Storm. But again, I'd like to emphasize that a lot of work has been done by the arranger, which is a dear friend of mine. His name is Greg Ryan. Great arranger that worked actually for different video games companies, very important video games companies. So he knows how to arrange. But together with Barbara, we created this music, and it's basically the work of 3 people this time. So it's very important to emphasize that.
It was fun. So we kind of mapped out the songs on the guitar, and then we said, "Oh, what do you hear?" And we're like, "Oh, a French horn or a cello or this or that." And then we got together with Greg. Can you put a French horn, a cello, and a this? And what a great guy to work with. He's just so kind, and he was like, "Yeah, we can do that." And then he'd put it together. We'd listen. We'd say, "Can you change the cello to a flute?" Sure. So when someone has that kind of flexibility and capacity, and then he also said, like, wow, I really think this, I've forgotten exactly how he said it, but he said, I took the liberty of putting this little part in this one song. Is that okay? What a kind thing to say. And we were like, not only is that okay, it actually makes the song so much better. So it was really fun working with him. We laughed a lot, actually, doing that.
That's a lovely collaboration. Did you guys do it virtually, like with video conferencing and plugins, or did you actually physically get into that room again together?
No, we did it mostly in person, which was just great. I mean, Greg worked on certain parts alone, and then we came and listened to them. But man, there's nothing like sitting in the room with these amazing musicians. It just it changes everything to me.
Your input was very important. Very important. Absolutely. I see this as a 3-way collaboration, and again, it goes back to the very beginning of this interview where. We discussed the fact that, out of collaboration, even sometimes it can be challenging, but if the common goal is to really achieve, something that is honest and something that is effective, you can't do it by yourself. So, it's a work that it's a combination of 3 people experiences, the science and the musicianship of Barbara, Greg, and myself, so.
You said something to me too that really stuck with me, as you said, it's important to have respect. And, you always hear musicians do this and that, and then they break up and they can't agree on. So I think this concept of having respect for the other people in the room, even if momentarily you might think I just have to kind of think about this for a minute. Okay. It makes the collaboration so much richer.
Yeah. One thing that I learned is that, some decisions that were made initially felt not very good to me. But then I also realized that sometimes you have to listen and put some distance between you and what is being done in the moment. So what's important is really to trust the people that you work with and say, okay, it doesn't sound great to me right now, but I'll give it a chance. And I have to say that I could not reach the same level of, I would say, effectiveness with this album, considering the mission of the album, by myself. Never. I mean, it's just simply we needed the 3 of us, to achieve that. So I'm really now we're just the album needs to be mixed and mastered, but the essence I think is there, and I'll be very proud of this album. I think it could actually, besides the mission of having an effect on people with PTSD, it actually stands on its own musically. I think if you listen to the pieces, it could be, again, as I said, a movie soundtrack, or so it really musically stands by itself, independently from the mission of the album.
And that's one thing I said to you, even the beginning on Calm the Storm, is we want the music to stand alone as itself. We want it to be good music, right? So you can get on YouTube and you can listen to a lot of 528 hertz or, but the beauty of having actually good music, and you've heard Peppino play live. I mean, there's just nothing like it. The beauty of having good music is you want to listen to it. And I've had clients, I had one client who hadn't slept in years. She's been listening to this album 3 times a day for months now. It's changed her life. But if the music itself didn't stand alone, would you ever do that? You wouldn't do it. You have to love the songs. And if you love the songs, you'll play them and it will have a long-term effect on your brain. And so this is one reason I'm so happy to work with Peppino, because he knows how to make music that is really appealing and stands on its own. It's such an honor, really.
And for me, it's quite an experience to work with you, Barbara, because you know the field so well. You spend all your life really helping people, and you love music. So it's an honor for me to work with you as well, and seeing these two things merging together, music and science, in the name of helping people. I want to tell you just a quick story. I was touring in Central Coast, and somebody came to me. I was just a guest in a friend's house, and I gave the album the night before. And in the morning, I was on my way, to wash my face, and the owner of the house, she was on the stairs, and she was looking at me, and she said, "Peppino, thank you. Thank you and Barbara for creating such an album." And she had tears in her eyes. I mean, this is something, that, and really, you feel like you're doing something important. Music is important. People don't realize that, music can be life-changing. So, and I knew that all along since I was a little kid. It changed my life. But to see it to that extent, it's really something moving.
Yeah, and we've gotten all kinds of interesting texts and emails from people. Got something from someone in Norway, and I got a picture the other day of someone who said, "I put my baby to sleep with your music." Another lady was like, "I calmed the dogs down," and she said, "My husband's like, can you stop playing that album over and over?" And she was like, "No, I cannot stop."
I remember when the album came out, I was in the house and somebody was making a little video, and there was a dog in the room, and the dog was barking. Then we put the music, and the dog went and stopped barking. So it works also with dogs.
Apparently, yeah.
The opposite of an earthquake. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And this is internally in terms of your collaboration. You bring out the best in each other. And also externally in terms of impacting the audience, where ostensibly, to your point, Barbara, it's good music, but it's good music, and then it helps people with insomnia and chronic pain and other ailments. And that makes sense, right? Because in a sense, soothing music soothes, and it accomplishes what it's meant to do. And then you have this additional layer of evidence-based science. Your intent is to heal. And Barbara brings not only her musical chops, her arrangements and organ playing to accompany you, Peppino, on your music, but then the next layer of this. Can you talk a little bit about that, Barbara, which is you literally plug people in when they listen to your music. You measure literally the brain activity that's engendered by listening to your and Peppino's collaborative efforts. That's fascinating. And then there's a feedback loop, right? Where you optimize, you know what's working, you know how people are responding. And then when you do more songs and you expand to other conditions, you're learning and getting better at making music that heals.
Yes.
What's not to like?
I know. Well, that's the plan. We'll see. The you know what really struck me is when I read this research, and we talked about this a little bit in the music and medicine thing, and there are several studies that really stuck with me. And one is that music, the right type of music, can decrease depression by 40 to 50%. Like, why are we rushing off to get a pill or going to see a psychologist? Like, maybe we do the cheap intervention first.
You're undercutting your own practice.
Right? I'm trying to put myself out of business. But that one really stuck with me. And the chronic pain one, where when people listen to certain music over time, that it actually reduced their chronic pain, quotes, permanently. I mean, as long as it was tracked in the studies. And, chronic pain's terrible. And our health system doesn't address chronic pain very well. We had a huge opioid epidemic because of trying to use drugs to treat chronic pain. So I started thinking, and I was like, wow, these are sort of random songs these people are choosing. It's just what a researcher thinks. But I can actually look at the brain and see what aspect of this song. Is it the timbre? Is it the color of the sound? Is it the beats per minute? Is it the phrasing? Is it the melody? So I can start to deconstruct these, and then can we compose music that would be much, much stronger, essentially have a stronger effect by using these variables? And then what's cool is we took these songs and put the cap on people. So the cap is 19 electrodes. It picks up the neuronal firing of the brain, and we can actually image these networks. Yeah.
That'd be good for the electrodes. You could just
not a lot of hair in the way there. And in this workshop we do called Music, the Brain, and Healing, and this is the one we did last November, and we'd love to do more of them if people are interested. But Peppino played live, so I put the EEG cap on somebody.
That is so cool. You had like a live experiment.
Yeah, and he played one of his pieces. And what was your experience like watching that, Peppino? Or were you watching? Did you actually watch The Brain Fire live?
Yeah, I did. I was playing just a solo guitar piece. Actually, I was playing the piece. There's a piece that I wrote called The Blue Ocean. And I was looking at this monitor with all those colors. And I was playing a note, and immediately the brain was firing. And there was all those colors.
Talk about biofeedback. That is astonishing. So you have Peppino playing, and instead of just seeing how the audience responds and hearing like they're cheering or they're moving or they're in sync with you, you actually see the brain readouts from Barbara's experiment as a infographic show of their activity. Wow.
Very,
very cool.
Yeah. So I can actually put up a 3D, 3-dimensional image of the brain. And I didn't do it there, but I can actually go to some of the internal structures of the brain, so the emotional centers of the brain, and you can look at those separately to see if the emotional centers are getting activated. I mean, the technology that we have now, it's just stunning.
That's amazing. I'm seeing a YouTube viral video here for you guys. You guys are like Mulder and Scully from the X-Files. You have Barbara, who's very analytical. She's got the gizmos and the gadgets and measuring the biometrics. And then you have Peppino, who's raw intuition and creativity. And you're bringing these two together in a way that's fascinating.
It is fascinating. And, also the effect, because we had an audience there, to see, the people being so curious and then so inquisitive about what is this? because it is fascinating, and to be part of this is quite, an experience for me as a musician. So I'm glad to be part of this, really.
Where was that show, and how many people participated?
That was our workshop that we did in November up here in the Berkeley area. But oh gosh, I was going to say something about what's really interesting is we don't get to see our brains. And the first time you really get to see your brain, I remember when I was first learning, we hook ourselves up to practice. And I was just like, holy, you know what? Wow, like all this stuff is going on inside our skulls. And it's really stunning to look at that. And I've had so many people when I work with them and show them, here's what your brain is doing, here's your brain map, they actually start to cry because it's so affirming to understand more about what's inside you and how it's relating to what your experience is. And when you see the power of music, so when you were playing and you were playing some of those harmonics and some of those parts in that song, you can see the brain start to kind of explode, like it goes way, way out in intensity. And that's when you start to realize the power of music. Like, this isn't just like, oh, that was a pretty song. It is impacting your brain in a very, very powerful way. And I just want to say that because of that, you want to curate what you're listening to, because not all music is good for your brain.
Yeah, depending on your needs. So
Yes.
Going back to me, blow my bald head off. When I saw Peppino live, when you were just jumping octaves and, the complex arpeggiation that you sometimes did, your use of harmonics, you use the guitar as a percussive kind of instrument very frequently. You have such dynamic range and so much creativity that you bring to the instrument. I loved it because it was stimulating me in all of these interesting ways that most musicians don't do. It's a very unique signature style that you have. So for a guy like me, I was really into it, and your audience was into it too, and they responded differently to different pieces. You shared a broad range of your oeuvre, and you could tell that different folks responded differently. And it didn't always have to do with tempo or tone. It had to do with that complex way you arrange things. And to Barbara's point, the individual and deeply personal biochemical nature of their own brains, right? Because it's firing and flaring based on brain chemistry and their own emotional state.
Yeah, and the thing that's so amazing about Peppino is he can play, it's like, can you play bluegrass? Oh yeah. Can you play jazz? Oh yeah. Can you play, country western? I haven't heard you play country western. I'm sure you can play it. I mean, his range is so incredible. He can play classical. He plays Bach. I mean, he plays everything. So for me, it's like such a gold mine to be able to work with somebody like this, because their range, many people who play their instrument play one type of music, right? Like, I'm a classical musician or I'm a jazz musician. Someone who can play across these genres, when I'm thinking about the brain and matching input to different people and what their brains need, it's really amazing. I mean,
and you're a great performer. So it's not just like you have a super robot there playing every style, but you engage the audience, and that's triggering brains too, with that human component. Storytelling, you make people laugh, you come out, you do a little dance, you play for people individually.
Well, I have to say something. Enough about me.
Enough about me. What do you think about me?
Yeah. So the main thing here is, for me, I see these two separate things, and this merging of music and science, it's something different from what I do typically, but it's equally enjoyable. It's completely different. I see it as completely different, not only because of the sound of the two instruments together, because that makes the main difference. You should see, and this is one of the kind of the challenges of presenting this live, because it can only be done with real pipe organs. Recently, we played Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, which is an amazing place. And to me, the live performances that I do, the solo, where I play different styles and all that, it's a completely different experience than the one with Barbara, but equally enjoyable and really fulfilling in a different way, but equally fulfilling. So
how do you experience that differently? Like how would you describe that experience? There's another thing I'd be curious to hear from you is about when you have resonance between two people, and we actually have some data on this, when you play solo versus with somebody else.
Well, collaboration with other musicians is kind of communicating using a different language. There are moments when we look at each other as we play and we understand where we are. It's communicating, and we understand we are within the song, and we also feel similar emotion, I guess. And so it's an experience of it's kind of a unifying experience that you feel you are on the same sort of dimension, and that a way of communicating with other musicians that makes it very special. It's not, words are deceiving sometimes, but music, when it's honest, is not. And so communicating with you or other musician, when I play music, it's a way that is almost, it's a spiritual experience, really. You said that music is a spiritual force, but when it's really aimed to heal people, it becomes even more powerful. So I play with a lot of different musicians, and it's fun, and it's crazy sometimes, but with you there is the spiritual component and the idea of healing people that makes it unique.
No, I'll tell you something kind of funny. So years and years ago, I actually was a church musician. And when you're a church musician, you play the prelude and you play a little meditative piece. So you play the postlude and then you play these hymns. So you're doing solo work, and then the hymns are sort of dragging people along. People always want to sing more slowly. They sort of sing behind you. So you're out there trying to kind of drag them along. And the first time I actually played music like this with someone else was with Callum Graham, who I did an album with prior to Calm the Storm. And the first time I played with him and we looked at each other, I was just like, oh my God, this is like, there's nothing like this. It's that resonance. And we actually have data showing that when musicians sync up like this, their brains start to fire together. And so it is a transcendent experience. You're creating something that I think we experience as very deep and beyond words, as Peppino says. And that experience is just, man, it's mind-boggling. I can't even describe what that is because it's beyond words, And particularly around this music, I think what you said is interesting, that when you are working with somebody to have a healing effect on people, it elevates that connection in a very different way.
the pure humanity of what you're doing is so refreshing, especially in this age of the artificial intelligence. You've got 30-40% of a lot of new music that's streaming right now. It doesn't even involve an actual human being. And what you're describing is literally a very human enterprise from beginning to end, and especially in terms of its direct impact to other human beings. So you're putting your personal passion, your empathy into creating music, sounds, which was born from your human collaboration. And to your point, you're feeling this harmony working together. Then the music itself is designed to heal. And then, interestingly enough, you're using science and analysis to optimize it or determine its efficacy. But at the end of the day, it's about human beings communicating with other human beings and doing it in a way that is both creative and intuitive and analytical and intentional. And that's wonderful to hear. And in ways, it's an antidote to all the AI slop, don't you think? Which is like, well, why should we actually pay musicians and go see actual musicians when a machine can generate it in a nanosecond for free with infinite variation at our beck and call? Well, here in this conversation, we're getting answers to that question, which is human beings communicate and become one with other human beings in a very deeply emotional and even cognitive and biochemical kind of way. We're physical creatures, and there's no substitute to a great musician performing his or her own work. No substitute for collaboration among creative people. And even if you bring science into it, and especially if you bring science into it, it's for an objective. And the objective isn't more math or more programming or more efficiency, but to get to know each other better and somehow connect. And that to me is deeply inspirational and hopefully a counterbalance to our increasingly maddening society, which is becoming mechanized and more inhuman.
I think you're exactly right. And being in a room with a musician who's conveying, and there's actually data on this, who is conveying a certain resonance in that space is very powerful. But there's another thing I hadn't thought of actually until you said this, Mookie. So thank you for that little speech.
That's my bald
your
ranting.
bald head just came right. The heart part really came out there. Is afterwards. So when someone comes up afterwards, I think this is so important. And both Peppino and I stay after these. After we do these concerts, I hate to even call them concerts, these experiences, and people tell us what they experienced, and we get to respond to that. So someone comes up and says, my headache went away, or I got this image of my mother who died 15 years ago. And that human connection itself about how the music moved them is very healing. That's hard to give from AI. It's when the musician looks you in the eye or gives you a hug or says, thank you so much for sharing your story. That is powerful.
Yeah, lived experience. A machine, a large language model, is a generative pre-trained transformer. It is a bunch of software and matrix math and weighting and, just a bunch of technical stuff. But we're out there living lives with our own histories, our own traumas. And we use music as a form of deep self-expression. But also, to your point, the point both of you have made, it's a meaningful catharsis. Like we're letting it out. We're letting the world know how we feel, and we're connecting with our own humans. And Peppino, when you perform, you're, as I was mentioning, a great storyteller. And I don't mean to blow smoke up your backside. I'm just saying that a big part of your performance isn't just playing And it's not just what we're hearing, but what we're seeing and feeling in terms of you sharing your lived experiences. And that's a lot of fun and very, very engaging.
Yeah, I learn how to entertain, and I think an audience likes when you explain what's behind a song. What's the story behind the song. They found that then the song makes more sense to them. But also, it's a reminder to me of how I got to that song, how that song came out. It's very mysterious and very magical sometimes. Or sometimes it's very rational. Sometimes I create, by I want to use a certain scale or a certain rhythm. But when you explain this to an audience, it's always very, always as a good effect because people know the background. Now, when we do perform Calm the Storm, is different. In fact, in the beginning, Barbara explains that they should be quiet and not applaud at the end of each song, which makes it very different from what I do when I play my own show or when I play with other musicians. And this is but then, you can see at the end of each song, the album has 9 songs. And so we play following actually the album, the order of the compositions in the album. And at the end of each song, it's interesting to me. I look into the audience and I see sometimes people like this or like this or like this. You can tell that they're connecting to us.
Those are actually good signs for this kind of experience. If you're at a heavy metal concert, that might not be the kind of feeling you want to evoke. But for Calm the Storm, if you see people tuning out, mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. In fact, I remember when we did the retreat in Berkeley, there was a family, a mother and 2 kids. They came, and actually they hugged each other. It was remarkable.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So you got Calm the Storm, and I saw even when you were in Mission Viejo at the Village Hall there performing, you had Calm the Storm on the table. People were buying it, picking it up. You were spreading the word about this great project that you're doing in addition to your other work. When is this next album coming out? Do you have a tentative title for it? And do you have any kind of teaser tracks that I could even embed within this podcast to get people excited about
it? We don't have it. We don't even have a teaser title or teaser tracks, but I do have some data now. I haven't looked at it yet, but we have some people who have listened to the first 5 songs on it. So when will it come out? So I'm going to give you the scientist answer.
Okay. Of course
when the data are right,
All right. Yeah, we're ready when the metrics indicate.
It's one thing if we were just like, wow, we're going to put these songs together, we're going to mix and master them, and it's going to come out like that. With Calm the Storm, we got lucky. Either that or we're both brilliant, and we kind of hit everything right off the bat. I'm not sure that's going to happen with this one because it's so much more complicated, so we may have to go back and do some revisions. But if we get lucky, I would say maybe this coming fall. But because we're looking at information and we're getting feedback, so we actually monitor people's brains before, during, and after the song, and then we ask them to give us feedback on just what they experience. So that's a lot of stuff to look at and figure out whether the songs are working.
And you have different types of audiences, right? At different points in their PTSD journey.
Yes.
And to your point, it's not linear. It cycles back and forth. And so you have much more complexity. It's more dimensional. The multivariate analysis, right?
Yes, exactly.
And how about you, Peppino? I saw you in Mission Viejo. What's your status now? You guys are finalizing this album. Are you Are you touring? How can people see you? Like, do you have a schedule? Peppino here, there, everywhere? Get more Peppino, folks.
Well, people can visit my website to find
Yeah,
out.
we'll put that in the description below to get your itinerary.
Yeah, my next concert is actually in Berkeley. There's this very lovely venue in Berkeley called the Freight, and I'll be playing with actually a two times Grammy Award winner violinist Matt Stalling. It's a duet concert. I mean, guitar and violin. So we'll play all kinds of music, essentially original music. But that's my next concert. But then I have tours in Europe coming up. You can find all these things, the details if you go.
And I'm a fan. You could take my N of one. I heard you on the CD that I got from Barbara, and I was calmed. but when I saw your live performance, I don't want to keep throwing these superlatives at you, but it was deeply moving and fun and entertaining, and I would heartily recommend that people check you out. While we're here, can you tell us a little bit about your creative process? Because that's what I was thinking when I was hearing your pieces. Like, where did it come from? I don't see this guy sitting with a music score and like Beethoven, agonizing for months with a bunch of crossouts and edits. I see you channeling something. Is that kind of accurate? Do you pick up a guitar and play and riff and kind of engineer your own mood through your art? How do you go about doing it?
Well, it's both. Sometimes it comes from an emotion, or being in a certain place or being with a person that I know, a person that I love, or a person that, I wrote songs for my daughter or songs for my friends. That's more emotional. I think of them, and somehow that creates something in me. And for some reasons, I'm able to translate that into sounds, and it's a question of, it's very kind of a muscle oriented. I use the fretboard of my guitar, and somehow my fingers find a way. I usually come up with very embryonic ideas that I record, and then I revisit them and I expand. So this is more of an emotional approach, but there's also a rational approach where I may start with a theoretical, like a bass line, just playing a bass line on the guitar, and then using that as the inspiration to write the chord progression and then a melody on top. So sometimes it's like that. Sometimes I use the computer. I just write on like a score, and then I see if it's playable on the guitar. So, there's different ways. There's not just one way for me. There's all these different ways. Some of them are emotional and intuitive. Some of them are more, rational and kind of almost mathematical, So, and this is, I think the beauty of creativity in music is that you can use all different kinds of approaches. But there's one commonality here, is that I know when the piece is ready. There's something in me that says, okay, this is done. And I don't, there are people that are continuously, trying to work on a piece for years. I'm not that kind of person. Because at one point it becomes too perfection. I don't believe in that. In fact, I like when I listen to an album and there are mistakes there, because that speaks about the humanity of a person, But that's not an excuse for trying to do your best. But at one point you have to let go. You have to let the piece go on its own, and then you'll see. Sometimes I revisit a piece years later from the perspective of fingering, you changing the fingering, maybe adding a little thing. But it's like when you are in the kitchen, and you want to make a red sauce. Now you can use, tomatoes and garlic or tomatoes and onions. It changes the flavor. It's like adding those flavors in a way that is satisfactory to you. And then if you're lucky enough to also please an audience with that music, then you're lucky. Then I feel pretty lucky that I can, sometimes I think I make a living playing the guitar. I feel pretty lucky. Yeah.
And you love what we would consider alternate tunings. When I saw you, I don't remember if you even had too much in standard tuning and you went song to song. I play some guitar, and I appreciate how difficult that is, because when you retune a guitar, in a sense, you get a completely different fretboard. The relationships between the strings change. And what works in one tuning is just noise in another. How does your brain reconfigure that fretboard song to song? That's very distinctive. Not many musicians do that.
Well, for instance, with Calm the Storm, under the parameters that Barbara gave me, I felt like, okay, let's use some strange tunings here. So that way, you're not, you don't have the obstacle of knowing theory and scales and chords. It was, Barbara had an idea. I said, okay, how can I create something here that surprises me? So let's use an open tuning. When you change the tunings of the guitar, then you don't know scales or chords anymore, because everything's
out the window. That's why I found that stunning, which is like, wait a second. Everything is completely disorienting.
So this is an application of what you just said, just stepping in the dark to accomplish something. And I did that multiple times when we were working together, me and Barbara and I should say, on this album. I used open tunings, but it was under the guidance of her that I could create something using that expedient of open tunings. So that's right there. It's an application of a device. I call those devices, but you need a goal. So Calm the Storm was I use a lot of open tunings to achieve what was the common.
You use open tunings in a way that's opposite of what many blues and rock musicians do. So you see Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones. He'll have an open G, open C tuning. That's so he could just slide with one finger and
if you
play
look
the
at
chords. That's not what you're doing. You are playing. You are riffing. You are.
But you know what he's doing that is different from me? Keith Richards. He's making millions. I'm not, but he's also using 5 strings versus 6 strings. You know that, right? He's using a G tuning just with 5 strings.
Well, one finger.
But you know what? He looks very happy when he plays.
He's kind of like this, which is, I am Keith Richards, and I'm just going to do what I want. And to your point, be world famous, make millions, and look like I'm 500 years old.
But I think it looks very happy, and so I look also very happy when I play. I'm happy. So music, but definitely there's a difference between us.
Clearly, and then that complements well with Barbara. What's your approach to the keyboard, Barbara? Because Peppino's very intuitive. and creative from this eclectic kind of way. And to me, you seem to be someone who loves analysis.
What would ever give you that idea?
So once again, back to the X-Files kind of mood between you two.
Well, I want to come back to this open tuning and just say something about when we were working on Calm the Storm. I'm not sure which song it was. It might have been Loving Kindness. Maybe you remember Peppino. But, one of the challenges of that is when you're playing the guitar, and even as a student, I can tell you that you always want to go up high. I mean, you want to get these beautiful sounds up high, and we were very limited that way. And I remember we were working on one song, and it's like we both kind of kept wanting it to go up high, and you kept saying, well, we can't go that high. I was like, yeah, we can't go that high. And then we were trying to figure something out, and you retuned. You retuned the bass string. And then later on, you said, well, what was that tuning? And I said, it was whatever it was, C, G, whatever. And you said, that's not a tuning I use. And then you said, oh yeah, I guess it's a tuning we're using now, because the tuning was created in order to create the sound that we needed. And that's such a beautiful use.
That's so cool. That is so cool. You're restringing the whole damn instrument, which again, from a player's point of view, there's nothing more disorienting than that. Like, where the hell is everything? And then you rely on your ear, right? And to your point, your muscle memory, you're actually making it up as you go along, which is beautiful. That's great.
Yeah. And to get that chord, so you just took the bass. I don't know if it was the fifth or I can't remember even which string it was, but you're like, oh, if I put this down here, then I can create that chord. And you knew that because you had in your mind the frequency of that string and where it needed to go to. I mean, that's a true musician, right? Like. When they hear that, they can orient themselves to those musical relationships in space. It's amazing. Yeah.
It keeps you out of a box, because, here's the pentatonic scale, even here's the augmented scale. And then you're used to patterns. You're playing patterns instead of listening to your ears and channeling your heart. And that's why this sounds so fabulous to me, which is it breaks convention. And by breaking convention, you're forced to be in the moment with another musician, letting it out. And I think that shows in the final product, which is if you're stimulating the minds of your recipients, you're channeling that enthusiasm and that energy rather than just playing patterns on a fingerboard.
Yeah, correct. There was a common goal that needed to be achieved. And this is again the results of collaboration, and that was remarkable. Yeah, no, I think very very happy about this album.
It's funny when you're in the moment, or at least when I was in the moment, my experience of it, and then looking back on it, I have a different perspective now from distance about what was going on.
I know it was good, and it was quite an experience. So I'm glad you challenged me, and I'm happy about the results. So.
Well, and beforehand, I remember sending you that email that was like, hey, we don't even know if we can work together. And you were like, that's right. I'm coming out for a week. We're going to sit in a room 8 hours a day with each other. We don't even know each other. And luckily, it worked.
Yeah, good. Excellent.
It worked.
You guys took a leap and you did it. So congratulations on your second musical enterprise. We have Calm the Storm, folks, and we're going to put links in the description. It's really meant for people with insomnia, chronic pain, migraines, but it's a great album. Just check it out. And it's a product of this wonderful collaboration. We're anticipating the PTSD extravaganza, which has a much more diverse range of songs and arrangements and music. You've got an arranger, Greg, is that right? Who helped you put that together. and that should come out in the fall, hopefully. And we'll be mindful of that. Stay tuned. And I want to congratulate you both on just cutting the edge of where music and science and healing and performance come together. And it's been a real joy talking to both of you. And go see Peppino. Check out his website. We'll put the links in there too. And stay posted with Barbara and her research.
Yes.
Because you are a researcher. You're not only a practitioner, you are a researcher. We are learning about the brain and the mind and how it reacts to music. And
Yes.
and just we would love to see one of these workshops or these performances. It would be so intriguing to see Peppino playing, Barbara playing, and then you got the readouts and people plugged in. So you see the change that happens in people when they listen to your experience of great music. And then I'm curious how people would receive your stories. Peppino, you talk about, you met so and such on the veranda in France and you were drinking wine and then boom, the melody happened and we see what goes on in their brains too. That'd be kind of interesting. Thank you so much. Like, comment, and share the No Hair, All Heart podcast. My wonderful guest, Dr. Barbara Minton, and her collaborative genius, Peppino D'Agostino.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mookie.
You too. Thank you.